Frank Finelli, and today I will be presenting on why I believe modern architecture is killing the soul and making people apathetic. Pretty serious title, right? It's just a building. How is it killing people? Isn't it just supposed to be a school, be an office, be a hospital? Uh, it's just a functionality of our life. How does its design impact the way I feel and the way our society behaves? What I would like you to do is imagine that I just gave you the trip of a lifetime to Rome, London, New York, San Francisco, any major city in the world. Where would you go? What would you see? I know I would go see, if I was in Rome, I would go see the beautiful cathedrals, the Colosseum, even regular everyday architecture. The apartments people live in are usually far more beautiful aesthetically than the buildings we see around us today. Even in those cities, such as Rome, Paris, modern buildings fail drastically in comparison to something built 100, even 100 years ago. It doesn't even have to be from the 13th century or from the year 700 BC. Something from 1950 is most likely not going to be as awe-inspiring as something from 100, 200 years ago. So let's dive into it. It's a little hard to see, but this building probably looks very familiar to everyone in this class. If you've lived in Utah for any amount of time or even visited, I know I'm not originally from here, but when I would visit downtown Salt Lake, this building was always very clear in the skyline. And I always wondered, what is this building? Why it's so much nicer compared to most other buildings down here. So this is the Salt Lake County building, and it's just a government building. However, it's extremely beautiful for what it is. It was built in the late 1890s for Salt Lake County and for the city of Salt Lake. And uh, what it does is it inspires us to trust the government, in my point of view. This inspires that government is serious and that uh, we should really respect the offices that are held within this building. This is a great example of something we used to build, and I'm not even showing you a cathedral from a major European city or from New York. This would just be a regular building to someone living in Salt Lake in 1890. Now this is the Boston City Hall, and it is a prime example of brutalist architecture. This was built in the 1950s, a time period where everything conventional is being turned upside down, and we have architects designing buildings of this nature. What does this make you feel? How does this make you feel? I know for me, I think I'm going to, if I was working here, I think I'd be working in a bunker or some Cold War building that belongs to the military, that probably belongs in the Soviet Union. It doesn't really inspire. It's not beautiful. It, it could even bring us down when we look at it compared to other buildings in the beautiful city of Boston that has such historic buildings. So what happened? How did we go from the Salt Lake County building that was built in 1890 in Salt Lake City, which was a very small population center in the United States in the 19th century? I bet if you asked someone in New York in 1890 where Salt Lake City was, they couldn't even tell you. We were still building buildings of this nature in the middle of what people consider nowhere. Now, of course, Salt Lake's a major metropolitan area, but back then, that was just a normal building. And then now, in the latter half of the 20th century in Boston, a major metropolitan area, you have brutalist architecture. coming into the world, and that this was people's idea of what the future was going to look like. You know, Jetsons, everything was going to be very functional. It was going to be efficient. But now we are living in the 21st century that people in the 50s were thinking of, and this is not beautiful to us still. So what happened? In these images, you see soldiers in trenches, World War I, 1914, 1918. World War I was the end of the European Empire. You have the Austro-Hungarian Empire collapsing, you have the Ottoman Empire collapsing, the German Empire collapsing, uh, the Kingdom of Italy would soon follow. All these empires were known for their gorgeous buildings, the gaudiness almost of their architecture. It's kind of the reason why most people want to visit Europe today. However, World War One completely annihilated most of the young population of France, Germany, Italy, England. People were in disarray. Who wants to build a beautiful building when you just lost a million 20-year-olds in a devastating war that destroyed Eastern France and Belgium and other parts of Europe? How would we recover? And then 20 years later, you have soldiers landing in Normandy in an even more devastating war where we literally bombed almost every major city in Germany. France was annihilated. Russia was annihilated. Uh, Buildings such as Monte Cassino in Italy were leveled to the ground from the 8th century. I bet we wouldn't really be in the mood to rebuild these buildings either, which took hundreds of years to come together. These weren't just built overnight. Uh, so the question is, where do we go from here? In my point of view, it's going to be a long road. However, if we start instilling into our youth what a beautiful building is, we take them on trips, even locally in Salt Lake. There's tons of beautiful buildings to see. If we inspire them, hey, this was something that took a long time. It's worth it. It's going to last into the generations. Our youth will then become inspired to want to build these types of buildings instead of throwing up office buildings in 6 months, cookie cutter homes. Let's build something that inspires beauty and creates a longevity of our culture that we want to pass down. And we're not just a culture of billboards, of glass buildings that don't really tell much about who we are. If an archaeologist was to visit Salt Lake City in 3,000 years, they would probably find remnants of that county building, the temple downtown, these stone structures that were meant to last through time instead of the buildings we're putting up today. Thank you so much for joining me today and speaking about something I'm very passionate about, beautiful architecture. I hope this inspires you to go visit some beautiful buildings. Maybe you're going to go on a trip this summer. Take the time to go see what the city has to offer. Thank you.